Welcome to Reimagining Miami Gardens. In this groundbreaking podcast dissertation, we examine the profound impact of leadership on government with a specific focus on how it shapes the city of Miami Gardens. Through insightful interviews, in-depth analysis, and compelling narratives, we uncover the intricate dynamics between leadership and governance, highlighting the transformative power of effective leadership in shaping the trajectory of a city. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore the role of leadership in driving positive change and development in the now vibrant community of Miami Gardens.
Welcome to Reimagining Miami Gardens podcast. I'm Oliver Gilbert, the chairman of Miami-Dade County Board of County Commissioners and the former mayor of Miami Gardens, the mayor of a young and vibrant Miami Gardens. I'm excited to dive into the complexities of leadership in driving positive change in cities. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the challenges and opportunities faced by newly formed cities such as Miami Gardens in their quest for transformation. In our study, we aim to address the pressing issues that hinder city progress, from bureaucratic obstacles to limited resources and the critical role that leadership plays in overcoming those challenges. The purpose of our research and discussions on this podcast is to uncover the strategies employed by city leaders to drive successful city transformation initiatives and provide insights into essential elements of effective leadership in urban development. Join me as we navigate through the intricacies of city management, through policy and administration, examine the importance of collaboration and strategic decision-making, and uncover the valued lessons learned from successful city transformation initiatives. Together, let's explore the transformative power of leadership in shaping the future of our cities. Joining me today is Theresa Therilus. We call her Therilus. She's the former city manager of North Miami and the current chief operating officer of the county commission. She will be leading our discussion on forming a city leadership team for Miami Gardens. At that point, when I'm the head of the new council, me. And so it's really an interesting time, because that's the time when you actually get to put the team together that actually makes, I guess, your ideas about the city come to fruition. Theresa.
Chairman Gilbert, thank you very much for having me on the show. Let's dive into our discussion. So in 2012, you become the mayor of Miami Gardens. It's literally only 10 years old. But as mayor, you sit at the head of the policymakers, and you're to design and shape the city. What were some of your main concerns, thoughts, and needs from your perspective as you took on the role of mayor?
And listen, it was an incredible time. It was an exciting time in the city, but it was kind of a scary time too, because we were young, but we weren't brand new. And so we had, we were in that stage where we knew we needed to show progress. And when I became mayor, I had been on the council for a couple of years, and I realized that there are certain things that I had always talked about and always focused on when I was on the city council. I'd always talk about crime reduction. I always talk about public infrastructure. I always talked about economic development. I'd always talk about increasing communal engagement. And given the opportunity to actually do those things as the mayor, to set those policies, to be the voice and the face of the city, I took it as more than just being the mayor, because when, it's interesting, because when you're the mayor of Miami Gardens, it's a mayor, manager, city council form of government. The mayor sits as a member of the city council. The mayor recommends the manager to be hired to the city council. They have to confirm. The mayor has some executive authority, but he sits as a member of the council. He or she sits as a member of the council. So, but I took it as more than the actual role, because I realized that voters did. When voters think of someone that's the mayor, they don't just think of someone who votes like everybody else. They think of someone who's going to be the face and the voice, who's going to be the conscience and the values, the actual expression of who they are and what they believe in. I understood that. And so I leaned into that role. I leaned into that role in a way that in some ways kind of enlarged the seat of mayor, because my colleagues would say, well, you're a member of the council. And I would say, yeah, but I'm not just a member of the council. I'm the mayor. So when the city's having problems, they look to the mayor. They don't look to council persons. And so I identified all of those areas that I knew I wanted to impact change in it. And I just said, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. And I started talking about that almost my first meeting out.
And so you now know the things that you want to do. How did you think about effectuating that? And what did your leadership team have to do with that?
Well, so when you're the mayor in a mayor-manager city council form of government, you don't have any actual administrative authority. You don't have administrative authority. So I can't hire or fire anyone. I can, except for the charter officers, the city attorney, the city clerk, and the city manager. And they would still have to be fired by me and the council together. So in some ways, it was leveraging what my politics had become, what my statute had become politically, along with what my policy, I knew I wanted my policy to be. And so I looked at it and I thought, well, there are things that I know I need from people who are around me. I need people who actually see the city the way that I see. And that was fundamental, because Miami Gardens at that time actually suffered from a perception problem. People would say, oh, this is the inner city, but there was nothing about Miami Gardens that said it was the inner city. It had a high home ownership rate, a high percentage of its residents went to college, got college degrees, had jobs. They weren't, when you track their credit cards and where they were spending money, you realize they were spending money in all the best places, just not here because they didn't have the opportunity to spend money here. So I knew it wasn't the inner city, but I needed somebody in the administration who was going to be leading my efforts in land use and development to also see it that way. And I remember a conversation that I had within the city manager. I think this was the point when I realized that he wouldn't continue to be our city manager. I said, well, I want to talk about economic development. And he said, well, the only thing you could really expect people to open up here is maybe some weave stores and a liquor store and a gas station. And I said, thank you. And I just left the meeting. I went and I asked the city attorney for his contract. I immediately wanted to know the buyout provisions. Tell me how I buy him out. And it was important because he was a good man. I'm not going to disparage him. He wasn't my type of leader. He didn't see the city the same way I saw the city. So I knew that it would be too much for me to remediate him into my thinking, and at the same time, use the 8 years at max that I had been given to be transformative in the city. I didn't have time to teach him to think like me, to teach him to see like me. I needed someone who fundamentally could actually, we had the same perspective. We thought that we could do the same things. I needed that. And so we started having the very difficult conversations that you have when you realize you need to transition leadership when you don't necessarily have the unilateral authority to transition leadership. And so I knew it was very, very important that I do it the right way. And so I did. I said, back then, Miami Gardens isn't the city financially that it is now. Now I leave Miami Gardens 8 years later. Miami Gardens has a 47% reserve. Back then, Miami Gardens had a 9% reserve. But he made out an outlandish claim on his contract saying we owed him a bunch of money. I said, you know what? That's fine. I'll pay you. I wanted him to go away quietly. I wanted the ability to bring in someone else. And I was willing to pay for that transition period. Like, I don't need all the noise. I don't need all the rancor. He came. He did his job. We threw him a party. He left. Cool. That's fine. A lot of times when people, and I see this in leaders sometimes now, and we would have people come and observe our city council meetings over time, and people would always pull me aside. I've been involved in leadership organizations. I was, well, how did you do this and how did you do that? And it's interesting. I was never particularly interested in having to demonstrate my authority on the dais. If I can avoid firing somebody on the dais, I would prefer not do that. I don't want to treat professionals like that. They're professionals. They need to work someplace else. You don't need to do that. If you can avoid doing that, avoid that. Find ways, and it's also good for the community, because when you belittle and tear down somebody in public like that, it does have an effect on the community. It does have an effect. If nothing else, it's going to be a news story. Look what they did. And so you don't want those type of things. You don't want that. That's contrary. That's counter to your actual goal of building the city. So let's not do it that way. Let's figure out how we get through this, and let's start with the city manager. And we'll start with the city manager because I can't really tell who works for him and what their actual attitudes are, because they've all been doing what he told them to do. And so I needed to know whether they would work out, whether the economic development people would work out, and the land use people would work out, how the assistant city manager, how would they work out? And so I needed to be able to understand that. And so we start that. And luckily, he comes to the realization that he had served his time and he had made a good living, and we had taken him through his retirement, and he wanted to move someplace else, and we helped him move there. And we let those times just be gone. And what I said was, we'll start to build right now, right here, with the people who are willing. And everybody wasn't willing. So I was only the second mayor of Miami Gardens. And I remember a couple of people said, they didn't have confidence in my leadership at all when I became mayor. Some people left the city. They said, we don't think the city's going to do well. And I was thinking to myself, well, the crime is high and the debt is high and the reserves are low. I couldn't really mess up anything more than that. I mean, what do you want? No one's opening businesses. I mean, if a community center that nobody from the community goes to, well, what could I do to mess it up? So I was really perplexed by them actually saying, well, they wanted to find other jobs. Well, okay, well, listen, great. Now I remember when those same folks tried to actually come back a couple of years later when the city was doing better. And I was like, nah, we're good. You didn't believe. I don't need people who don't believe. What I found is that competence is important, but loyalty and an ability to follow directions are seminal. You don't need everybody to understand every part of the big picture. You need very specific people. The mayor, the manager, the attorney, they need to get it. These are our goals. This is what we're going to do. Now, however we get there, this is where we're going to end up. Let's go figure it out. You all are the experts. You're the professionals. Let's figure it out. And so we started to figure it out. I started to look at people and talk to people about a new manager, a new staff. And I had met a young man who had been the city manager at the city of Hollywood. And his background was in city planning. And I met him, and I remember I met him, and he wasn't at Hollywood anymore, and he was doing some private stuff. But I remember picking his brain about economic development and what we could do. And so when I said, hey, you know what, we're going to transition you, the current manager, I said, but I would like you to bring on somebody as an assistant city manager before you go, so we can start to raise him up. And he brought him on because he understood what was happening. Because I had already agreed to, hey, you know what? We're going to make you go. We're going to send you off like a king. You're going to be taken care of perfectly. I got no problems with that. And so we transitioned a new manager in, and that manager ends up being Cameron Benson, the manager that serves the entire time that I'm the mayor. And primarily it was because, and we didn't agree on everything. We didn't have to agree on everything. We saw the city the same way. We saw the city the same way. We saw the fundamentals, the bones. You look at the bones of something. Like when you're looking at a car, and you really want to look at a car and tell what the car is, because you look at the bones of the car. Well, is the engine good? Is the axles good? What are the bones of the city? The bones of the city aren't bad bones. We can make good stuff here. We have to be very intentional. He understood that. We would always have these conversations where people would say, Miami Gardens is the largest black city in the state of Florida, predominantly black. And people would say, well, businesses don't want to open here because we're black. And I remember telling residents, I said, businesses don't want to open here because all of your land is zoned residential. So that means anytime you want to open a business, you have to come and pay to have a zoning change, advertisement, and you have to have residents come and say, no, we don't want you to change the zoning. Business likes certainty. They like the ability to actually know that they can come, get their doors open, and do business. So how do we start to address those things?
So I think what you were talking about is that one of the biggest things for you was the vision.
Yeah.
And so you came on and said, I need someone who has my vision.
Mm-hmm.
And when you realize, hey, if that person doesn't have my exact vision, it's time for me to look for a new team, but to do it in a classy way so that we keep the communal support. And that person is professional. So when you started to identify candidates to replace, what were your top 3 key qualities you were looking for?
I wanted you to have my vision, number one. I wanted you to be someone who could independently relate to the community. And I wanted you to be someone who had done it someplace else. So the greatest indicator of what people not just will do is what they have done, but what they can do is what they have done. So I wanted somebody who actually had ushered in economic development, who had actually looked at stuff from a land use perspective and a zoning perspective and said, hey, we can do some things here that are special. I wanted somebody who saw those things, someone who said, hey, you know what? We need to go out and promote the city. Because if everybody else is going to tell your worst story, you shouldn't be telling your worst story. You should be telling your best story. So let's go out and tell our best story. I wanted someone who had done those things before. And so, I'd been involved in the League of Cities, and I'd been involved in all these civic organizations. So I'd been exposed to a lot of public administrators, and some good and some not good. But more importantly, I needed people who, from a temperamental perspective, I am all go all the time. Someone who understood that I was going to wake up, and Monday morning was going to be everything because I've had uninterrupted time to sit down and come up with new ideas. And we're going to what I call we're going to shorten the line. And that's kind of the difference between me being a mayor and being a commissioner now, even as a chairman. When you're a mayor, when I was the mayor of Miami Gardens, it was a very short line between when I thought about it and when it got done. Cameron and I wanted an administrator who was able to shorten that line. I don't want to, in a city of 120,000, I don't want to have an idea and it takes 2 years to implement. I want to have an idea. Hey, you know what? I want to do this program for these kids. I want to do this program for these seniors. And I want somebody standing that idea up in a month. Because people see those things. And people seeing those things gave them confidence in what we could do because they saw that we were doing something. And so I needed, those are the things I really, really needed. I really wanted in some. And I think that's what probably drew me to Cameron.
So what were some of your strategies in terms of once you got this new team in place, you brought in Cameron, what are some of your strategies and how you dealt with making sure that the team followed with what you were looking for and was able to execute?
So like I said before, I didn't have actual authority, right? But there's being the policy head of a city, then there's also being the political head of the city. And I was the undisputed political head of the city. So where I didn't have actual authority to fire anybody, people understood that as I walked through the city and said, hey, why don't you do it this way? Hey, why are you doing it this way? Hey, I really want you all to return emails within 24 hours. Because I return emails within 24 hours. So if you don't return an email within 24 hours and they email me and they say they forward your email, it's going to be a problem for me. You don't want it to be a problem for me. I'm capable of doing everyone's job was my line, but I don't want to do anyone's job. I just want to do mine. So I would walk through and I would talk to them and I would do events with them. I remember we had this cleanup event. And they came out and they gave everybody a pick stick and a garbage bag but me. And I was thinking to myself, this is interesting. And so they had run out of pick sticks and garbage bags. All right. So I went and I grabbed a bag, I was sharing it with somebody, and I just started picking up trash. And Sandra, who's now my deputy chief of staff at the county, she was my assistant back then. And she told them, I'll pick up trash. I got no problems picking up trash. I don't, and the reason why I don't have a problem is because I want everybody to understand that the mayor is picking up trash. Everyone should pick up trash. That because I'm willing to do anything for the city, you should be willing to do anything for the city. I'm willing to lead by example in those ways. And so I would go out to the parks. I would interact with kids. I would go out to the senior centers and I would actually help serve lunch at times to the seniors. I would do all those things because it helped staff, but it also connected me to the community. So if you're out in the parks with parents who are rooting for their kids in a Little League football game, they're never going to forget that their mayor is there with them. When you're serving lunch and singing and dancing with the seniors at the senior center, They're never going to forget that the mayor served us lunch. The employees won't ever forget it, neither will the seniors. And it's saying something to both of them. So when the senior says to me, this is not quality food, and I look at it and I taste it, you know what, it's not quality food. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to change the vendor. We're going to change the vendor. And the next day, the vendor was changed. And that taught the staff, the residents, and vendors something. The idea that you could give us something and give my residents something that wasn't good was dead. We weren't doing that no more. We paid for stuff. We paid good price. We're going to get good quality. That's what's going to happen. And so, but all of those actions taught people. I didn't have to say a lot. And so you found people, some people would like me and some people wouldn't. Some people would love me and some people would be terrified of me. But you know what? You find different ways to use all of that because you motivate them in different ways. Some people are motivated by fear. Some people are motivated by love. You don't know who it is until you're actually in there. Some people are motivated by, rewards. Hey, you know what? I'm going to get this promotion. You find different ways and a different leadership style. And Cameron gave me the freedom. He was the manager, but he understood that I was going to walk around and talk to people. I'm going to walk around and talk to people. I'm going to be in the HR and say, hey, you know what? I wanted us to hire young kids from the community to be in the police department. Why aren't we doing that? And they'd have to explain it to me. And if they couldn't say it out loud, then it was a problem. And what I found is a lot of times people couldn't say out loud why they were doing something. And so if you didn't have a reason for doing something that you could articulate, then just do it my way. Just do it my way. Because you can't articulate why you're doing it a different way. So just do it my way. I can articulate why I want you to do it this way. And so those type of lead by type examples, letting people see you, being hands-on, but not necessarily forcing them, because I didn't have the authority to force them. I had no actual authority. And in all the time that I was the manager, the mayor, I never threatened to fire the manager. I never had to. It was never that type of situation. So it was something that I was able to see his team, the people who worked for him. A lot of the same people who worked for him worked for the last manager, but they did completely different work. A lot of the same land use and building officials who end up helping us transition the economic development of Miami Gardens worked for the last manager. So the difference wasn't them per se or their capabilities, their capacity. It was the vision they were given and the oversight they were given. It was now my vision they were implementing. And so I needed them to do it with fidelity.
So we know that whenever you're coming into a place and you're starting to create change, that can be a fear factor for many people, and you're going to get pushback. How did you specifically deal with pushback that you've gotten from city employees and sometimes the community with all of the change?
Oh man, it was community first, and so because Miami Gardens is a relatively big city that feels really small. The community, they would come out to city council meetings at first, and they would always use their 2 minutes, and they would always come with something crazy. And I could tell they were being fed information, a lot of times lies, by employees. And I would listen, and I'd say, hey, you know what? Your 2 minutes are up. And they're like, you're not responding? And I said, well, it's not public question and answer. It's public comment. You got your comment. Now you get to sit down. And well, I remember somebody said, well, we're the same. I said, no, we're not the same. All people are created equal. All positions aren't. You stand there representing you, maybe your family. I sit here representing 120,000 people. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue. They elected me for my decision making. They elected me for my values. So when you say you speak for the community, when those folks would come, we speak for the community. No, I speak for the community. I know because I put my name on the ballot. I told them what I thought, and they voted for me. Overwhelmingly. Not the favorite. 6 other people running, over 60% of the vote. They overwhelmingly chose me. So I speak for the community. So always never being held hostage by the room. One of the things, and I think I see it now sometimes at the county commission. I see it in cities all over the place. Sometimes you could have a city with 350,000 people. But if 10 people show up in a room and criticize you, you think it's an apocalypse. Well, if 10 people there criticizing you, that means it's 349,990 people not in the room criticizing you. People think of democracies and representative republics as the types of government where if residents come and they tell you something, that means you have to do it. That's not what that is. When you run for office, you take that oath, you're taking an actual oath, not just for the people who show up, but mainly for the people who don't show up. So I don't have the luxury of letting the 10 mad people make policy for the 119,000 people who didn't show up, who trusted me and my judgment. I don't have the luxury of doing that. And so what I did was condition my colleagues on the council that, hey, we don't have to, we can listen to them. We can take it into consideration, but ultimately our job is to make the best decision for the entire city, not just the people who came and criticized. And setting that tone with the residents was big. Because when I set that tone with the residents, the employees, a lot of which lived in the city, start to really get it. Like, I'm not going to be bullied. I'm not going to be bullied. That's not how this is going to happen. So you can conform or you can leave, but you're not going to be my problem. It's not going to happen that way. And with that type of certainty and fairness, things start to ferret themselves out. People start to change and some people start to leave. Some people stay and they do their jobs well, but they do it because they're afraid. Some people do it because they really were true believers in what Miami Gardens could be and what my vision was for the city. From my perspective, I didn't really worry about why they were doing the right thing. I was just satisfied that they were actually doing the right thing.
When you kind of came in and you saw the change, what do you think were some of the lessons you learned outside of the fact that, hey, a small portion doesn't speak for everyone else? What else did you learn while you were making decisions about your new leadership team?
You know, I learned, and this is interesting because I didn't learn it, I understood it in this instance. Everybody, I heard H.T. Smith say this. H.T. Smith is a noted lawyer, black lawyer, one of the first black lawyers here in South Florida. I was a law student at the University of Miami. He said, I was the president of the BALSA, the president of the Southeastern region of the BALSA, regional director. And at our banquet, he said, everybody of our color isn't of our kind, and everybody of our kind isn't of our color. Let me say it again. Everybody of our color isn't of our kind, and everybody of our kind is not of our color. I learned to appreciate people who are of my kind and not just of my color. And don't assume that people see the world the way that you do because you all grew up in the same place and you're the same race. That's not necessarily true. And don't believe that someone who didn't grow up there and it's completely different race, demographics completely different, that they couldn't see, understand, and help. And so you had to really, really, really learn that. I learned to value what kind of person you were. And it became very important that you would see that, especially in my second term, as we start to fill out and the city's doing a lot better and we start to add people, we start adding people of a certain kind. It was an optimistic person. It was an aggressive person with policy. It was some people who weren't afraid to actually try new things. We started to add those people because that was the kind of person we were actually hiring for my personality.
So how do you align your leadership style with the needs and characteristics of your team members?
It's different for all of them. It still is. It still is. It's different for all of them. Some people require, A lot of supervision. Some people require just the general destination. They'll get you there. Some people require constant motivation. Knowing them is what's important. Like knowing who they are. So even when I was mayor of Miami Gardens, knowing how the planning director, how she saw it, how the building official, how she saw it, and because I used to have this saying, our default answer shouldn't be no. So in government, a lot of times when you're asking them to do something they haven't done before, or they're not used to, or it's new to them, the answer is just no. And so what I said was the default answer shouldn't just be no. Well, identifying those people who had a default answer of no helped me know that that's who they were, because it then helped me understand how to talk to them, how to lead them, how to guide them, how to coach them, how to actually move them in a way. So their default answer wasn't no, because a lot of the stuff that I was doing was predicated on I wasn't changing the laws of physics. I was changing constructs. Land use is just a construct. It's a map that somebody writes out about what you can do and where you can do it. What you do on parks, we're not creating new laws or anything or breaking state laws. No, we're doing things that we can do just in a different way and that hadn't been done here before. So when I start introducing the idea of like putting other activities like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all of those things on public parks, I needed a park director who was like, hey, yeah, I can see that. And the park director wasn't like that. And initially the park director wasn't like that. Someone who I could get there. Because I didn't need you to see it initially. I just needed you to be able to get there. If you were capable and I could get you there, that's fine. I'll take that. Because that's my job, is to get you there.
So it's interesting you talk about that, because as the mayor, you don't have the actual authority, but you've been basically motivating and trying to guide those to follow you, which kind of brings us to the path goal leadership theory, right? Where it's based on that you are motivating and guiding followers.
Well, it definitely is path goal. And I didn't know that necessarily like that in that way back then. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing back then. But as we sit here and I think about it and analyze what we did and how we did it and how I did it, and how really intimate it was and specific it was and different it was for different people. My relationship with the city attorney, who is a brilliant city attorney, who is still there, was different. And she'll tell you, I'm a lawyer by trade. She'll tell you that I'm a great lawyer. But really what I would just do is I would make her explain every step to me. And I would ask her questions about every step. And I would say this one word is the most powerful word probably in all of language. It has to have a translation in every other language. The word is just why. Why? Just why. And so because I would constantly ask her why, she would start asking herself, why not? But I knew that our relationship, because I had known her previously, was different. I couldn't work with her the same way I worked with Cam, the city manager. So sometimes I had to sit down with, hey, you know what? Let's go out at the city council meeting. Let's have a glass of wine. Let's talk this through. Let me pick your brain. And I always say this because they were all older than me. So my favorite line was, hey, let me pick your brain. Let me pick your brain. Just help me understand this. Can you show me how? I would do stuff like that, especially with her, and let her talk me through it. And as she was talking me through it, I'd have her explain it. When I would start asking why, she would intrinsically and implicitly start to say, well, why not? Or why do I have to do that? Or why do we have to do it that way? Or why can't we do that? She starts saying that, and she's such a brilliant attorney, she'd figure it out. And in the end, it was all her idea. She never even saw it coming until this podcast.
You made it her idea.
Yeah, no, I know. I just talked her through it. It was in her, but no one asked her the questions that way. people were always satisfied with the answer that had always been given. And so I'm just not satisfied with the answer that's been given, because the answer that's been given does not get me where I want to go. Look, if I say we're going to Tallahassee, we're going to end up in Tallahassee. We're not going to end up in Gainesville. We're not going to end up in Orlando. If we don't end up in Tallahassee, then the journey's not over, because we're going to end up in Tallahassee. That's our goal. And having being able to work with her that way, sitting down, that was one way. Our building official, completely different way. Hey, when people come in, no, that's not how it's done. Well, okay, I understand it's not how it's done, but they have experts on their side too. Let's just listen to them. Let's listen to them. And putting them in the room, because I didn't know much about this requirements for building officials, but putting their expert in the room with her, I did know how to listen to both sides and say, hey, well, that doesn't seem necessarily inconsistent. Why can't we do it this way? And so it was a different type of coaching. It was a different type of leadership. It was a different type of motivation, but it still got me to the same place. And I always had this kind of in my back pocket. I always say this: well, is it a state law? No. Is it a part of the state constitution? No. U.S. Constitution? No. County ordinance? No. It's a city ordinance? Yeah. A city resolution? Yeah. So it's something I can change if I need to alter your opinion of it. Because if I need to change it, I can change it, because that's my job, right? Do I need to change it to get you where I need you to be? And 9 times out of 10, the answer was just no. They would find out. They would figure it out, how to get there. But that was another type. That was not the building lady. That was the zoning lady. How do you interpret this in a way? Because otherwise, I can just write a new law and interpret it for you. How do you interpret it in a way that allows us to build density? How do you do that? Letting them figure it out. But it was different for all of them. It was different for all of them, and it took me actually knowing them. And so now I know them. And even if some of them transitioned, we have, city managers over the place and all this other stuff. I know them. I know their personalities. I know how they listen. I know how they learn. I know how they lead. I understand their personalities. It makes me a very effective communicator with those people specifically.
I love it. I love how you transformed Miami Gardens and how you've worked with the leadership. I've known your leadership style, and I think you really do pick out the top things of each of the people that you work with to get to where you want to go. The one thing that I always think about when I think of your leadership is we got to get there. And we got to get there pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's been a pleasure talking to you about this today. Any final thoughts? No,
it's just it's people are thinking about this in terms of new cities and leadership and understanding your staff. If I had to say anything, know them. Know first what you want to accomplish. Know them and know whether they have the capacity to get you there. If they don't have the vision right away, that's fine. You can give them the vision. If they're willing to learn the vision, adopt the vision. The vision doesn't have to be theirs. The vision might be yours. The vision will probably be yours. As long as they're willing to adopt the vision, we can actually work with them. Knowing them, having them adopt a vision, and figuring out different ways that actually motivate them. You begin to aggregate little successes in different parts of the city that ultimately comes together. Look, it was the finance guy who no one liked, but I knew that I wanted to have at least a 20% reserve. So I was going to work with him. All he got was he didn't get the vision for the whole city. He just got the vision for the reserve. It was the city manager who I said, you know what, primarily, I want you working on my economic development. So he understood everything, but specifically, he was adopting the things that needed to bring to fruition the vision for the economic development. It's police chief who said, hey, I want tough policing, but I also want community policing. And I want someone who's not afraid to get out there and talk to people. It was him understanding that I want a police force of people who are born and raised in this city who I send to the police academies. Him and her understanding that. They didn't have to get every part of it. They had to get their part. The big picture was mine. Understand what your big picture is. And if you can't find people to adopt the big picture, segment it off, have them adopt parts of the picture, and we'll just put it all together. Understand what moves them, what motivates them, what gets them where they need to be, and you be that leader for them. You being that leader for them allows them to be that leader for the people who report to them. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you for listening to Reimagining Miami Gardens. Join us for our next episode as we dive into the leadership principles that guided the transformation of Miami Gardens into the vibrant city it is today. Until then,